I am going to give you an idea of what the agenda's like tonight. We're going to focus on policy recommendations from COAB's subcommittees, and we're going to spend some time on the Portland Police Bureau's draft annual report.
Thanks, Michelle.
COAB members can look at this, and you should have gotten it a few days ago. So now is the time to ask questions, clarifying questions. We will also have a brief presentation from Mike Gallagher to answer questions about the officer of the Employee Assistance Program. The question was raised by the COAB about what resources are available to officers when they've been involved in a shooting. We'll have a break. We'll hear general public comment around 7 o'clock. Then we'll continue on with recommendations. The presentation by Siadam Edmo has been postponed. She had a family issue, so she won't be here tonight. Aimee Curley is participating via live stream. She will be sending notes, information, questions to Amy. Officer Paul Meyer and Captain Vince Elmore are on vacation. Rabbi Kahana is not able to attend due to a death in his congregation. And Sharon Myron will be arriving late. Okay, Mandy?
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I just wanted to make a few announcements that I usually make at the beginning of our meetings. Just wanted to let you know that restrooms are straight down the hallway. You would actually go all the way to the end of the hallway, and you'll find restrooms on your right. And in case of an emergency, the closest exit is actually right out here as you walk out to our left. I also wanted to let you know, and also folks who are watching at home or watching via live stream, we do have childcare available upon request. I do need a little bit of time to arrange that, so if you could give me about 10 days notice before a meeting, I'm happy to arrange childcare for you and have people on site to take care of kids so that you can focus on the meeting. Just give me a call at 503-823-5149. Usually I introduce Brad Taylor at this point. He is our mental health specialist. He is actually not here tonight, but he'll be back in April. And that's it. Thank you.
Tonight we have also a gift to the COCO that is being shared with members of the COAB and the public. It's a spring festival celebration as appears in the different multicolored bags and over on the wall there. Please help yourself. That's a gift to the COCO from the Lubins. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So let's start with Bud Pulis, who is the chair for the executive committee, who has asked for 5 minutes, and I said I would give them to him. Go, Bud.
Thank you, Kathleen. So I wanted to start by mentioning to the COAB members that we received a letter from Mayor Hales thanking us for our participation in the visit by Attorney General Loretta Lynch and Assistant Attorney General Vanetta Gupta, who met with us. It was a wonderful event. 7 COAB members were there. It's been noted with great emphasis that we all enjoyed seeing Philip in a suit and tie. And so a number of lessons learned were shared with AG Gupta, and he mentions them here in his letter. And I think it's very important to realize that we're contributing these lessons learned to the national conversation on this kind of work. So one of them was that regardless of missions or changes, all boards need time to cohere before being expected to work as a group. This is kind of what we did at our retreat, et cetera, but we did that very late in the process. It did help a lot, so that was a very important learning. The mission and expectations of the board must be clear. So We had to get training in the settlement agreement. We had to get training in many things. There were just a plethora of things we did not understand. And we've now sort of started to coalesce that into an onboarding process. So that was an important lesson for them as well. All members need to have adequate training. And it may be helpful for members to attend a community academy. It is important to understand existing community engagement strategies, and there should be recognition and support for the time and effort spent by members on the work of the COAB. One other thing that was discussed, actually it was emphasized by three of us, and definitely she was taking notes. They walked away understanding this was a very important point, was that we need to close the loop with the Department of Justice. We need to figure out how are things going. We need to make sure the people of Portland hear back on what's happening with recommendations. So that's it as far as Mayor Hale's letter. And now I want to address the attendees here. I wanted to, many of you are activists yourself. When I walk into this room, I'm surrounded by my fellow COAB members, but I also feel myself in a room that was built by Portland activism. So many people worked so hard, blood, sweat, and tears over decades of labor to get to a point where the Department of Justice is here, where we have a settlement agreement, where we have this opportunity. Every word I say in this room has to reflect the respect that I have for those people and to honor the sacrifices that they made in bringing us here. I would ask that all of us do the same, that we recognize the fact that we are in that almost sacred place when we come into this room. And then the second thing I wanted to say is I feel myself in the presence of greatness when I look around at the people who are on this board, who I am privileged to serve with. I actually am often quite abashed that I get to sit at a table with people who have started charitable foundations, people who have been senators, people who are doctors, people who are civil rights attorneys, and people who are also the leaders of tomorrow, people who are out there on the streets doing activism today in Black Lives Matter and so many other places. So I'm honored to be up here with them, and I would also ask that all of you feel the same way. Look at who these people are. Remember who they are. And finally, I'm going to take a page from our dear friend, Calais Luman's book, and say, let's also please remember this board specifically is very different than any other political body because we're not a political body. We're chosen because we suffer through mental illness. We suffer through trauma. We have been there. You will see many people of color around this table, more so than you will even see in the audience tonight. We have been there and suffered, and we suffer today. And so I will ask you for compassion when you speak to us. Please try not to traumatize us if you don't mind. I'd really appreciate that.
Or just give us a heads up.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Vianney. And with that, I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Bud. Thank you
you.
very much.
Well said.
Hmm?
Well said.
Did you hear what Abel said? She said, well said. To move on to the next agenda item. Officer Mike Gallagher. And I think we've given you 10 minutes. You got a whole lot of time. And to remind you why Officer Gallagher is here to talk with us, it's the question that was raised by COAB about resources available to officers who may be traumatized by having been involved in a shooting.
Good evening. I'm Mike Gallagher. I'm a police officer of the City of Portland. I'm currently assigned out of East Precinct. I've been part of our employee assistance program for probably close to 17 or 18 years now, part of the founding members of it, and been stuck with it. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the policies we have in place now when an officer is involved in a traumatic incident or an officer involved shooting. What I'm handing out now is part of our standard operating procedures, our policy manual that discusses the steps that we go through when an officer is involved in that. So if you look at page 2, it describes what a traumatic incident is, as well as what witness members are described as and how they're looked at or perceived by the Bureau and that involvement. So if an officer is involved in a traumatic incident, whether it be a shooting or some very traumatic call, there's several steps that we have in place that have to occur. That first off, that officer is placed on administrative leave, as are the witness officers, depending on their involvement in that situation. If it's an officer that was involved in a shooting, they are mandated to be off through the grand jury process, and then prior to coming back to work, are required to see a mental health professional to make sure they're in the right place to come back to work. Both mentally and physically, as far as their, I guess, emotional reaction to that shooting. Following that, they have a week off that basically is a transition period to, readjust to that time that they've been through, the stresses they've been through that the grand jury process, talking to the attorneys, the union people, the peer support members, the TIC members that they have been assigned to. That following week, they come back to work. It's sort of a light duty assignment. It's sort of a good way to describe it. They get their uniform back, they go to the range, practice shooting again, may visit the scene of the shooting to sort of, go through that emotional process of de-escalating that. And then they're put in a beat car, a partner car with another officer that sort of to go through that next week, next 2 or 3 days, as far as seeing how they're doing back on the street, seeing if they're emotionally ready to, hit the street full time on their own. At the end of that week, there's a communication between the peer support coordinator as well as command staff at the precinct and the officer that was involved to sort of make that determination. Are they ready to hit the street, go back 100%, or do they need some more time to sort of readapt into going back on the street full-time in a full-time capacity? In the course of this transition period, we also have mental health visits that are required at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. That is checked on. We sort of make sure those happen through our employee assistance program. All those visits are paid for by the Police Bureau. It's covered under the EAP program, so it's covered. We have specialized mental health professionals that deal specifically with law enforcement personnel and are very familiar with the type of work we do, the types of calls that we go on, the intricacies of police work as it is, and what happens if officers are involved in these type of shootings, so they know what to look for, the red flags that may occur or happen in somebody's life prior to them coming back to work. Whether they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, trying to head that off before it happens, dealing with those types of things to make sure they're 100% and ready to come back to work in a good emotional capacity. Starting at page 2 in that form that I handed out sort of walks through that steps, the decision that command staff has, the chief's office, and when this person is ready to come back to work. Obviously, if it's a real high-profile case, the chief's office has the final decision on whether this person, goes back to work and what capacity go back to work and where they go back to work. And that's all coordinated through the AP office, the chief's office, and the officer that's been involved in that shooting. Available for questions. Additionally, we have our EAP program has professionals that are available to the officers that work at the Bureau through our employee assistance program and the medical insurance that we have. They are allowed 8 visits a year that's covered for any type of situation that's going on. But going back to a traumatic incident, officer-involved shooting, that could be an ongoing visit, so they could keep going on. If it needed more than 8 visits, the Police Bureau would take care of that person to make sure they got through that situation. So it's not limited to just the 8 visits on a traumatic incident or officer-involved shooting.
Questions from COAB members? Bud?
So when I read this, it seems to be very focused on use of deadly force. And it occurs to me that police officers, all being very different people who would experience trauma in very different ways than each other, some might need help at times other than simply use of deadly force. Is there a process in place for either supervisors to identify or for officers to self-identify that they're having a problem and they need help?
Yes, very, very much so. Our office fields calls on a daily basis from people that are working for the Police Bureau that are going through different situations in that life, whether it be crisis-involved situations or just needed referrals for maybe a visit to a mental health person to check in. The 8 visits that I talked about are open to anybody for any reason. It's not just officer-involved shootings. If you're having difficulties at home with the child, trying to figure out how to deal with that, you can call up, get a referral to a mental health person, and go in and see that person, and it is covered under our employee assistance program with that. The Police Bureau, I found, has been very supportive in working with its officers who call up and need help, providing them the resources they need to work through that situation they're going through, and then getting them back to work in a manner that works best for both the Police Bureau and the person that's having the crisis.
Thank you.
More questions? Abel?
Thank you. Could you say more, please, about the Employee Assistance Program Coordinator? I'd like to know what is the background, skilled background of that person or persons, and then how are team members selected for the Traumatic Incident Committee team?
For the committee team, so the coordinator's position is basically chosen under the direction of the unit or the RU that they're working for. There's interviews that are done. Have they been involved in the peer support team as a whole? What their roles have been? Those types of questions are asked, and then that decision is made as far as that person being chosen as a coordinator. Right now, I'm the temporary interim coordinator, pending decision being made where that's going to go. I've been part of the team, like I said, since its inception, helped form the direction it's gone and been through all of the previous coordinators. As far as the TIC members are members that have been involved in a shooting, that have experienced, what goes on emotionally and the processes that occur as a result of that shooting. There is a period of time, usually a couple years' time, before they're even allowed to ask or request to be on the TIC committee to make sure that everything's going okay emotionally with them. And then they are vetted through our peer support process as far as question about why they want to be on the team, what resources they can bring to the team, how they think they can help other members, and that's discussed amongst the peer support team, the peer support coordinator, and a decision is made as to whether or not they're allowed on the team.
Just to follow up, please. Would you describe the Bureau's approach to employee assistance in this area as a best practice or best practices?
I think the current system we have in place is a best practice in regards to it's very innovative as far as helping the member that's been involved in a critical incident or an officer-involved shooting get through that process. The policy we have in place now is probably 3 or 4 years old, sort of before there was really nothing set in place as far as the direction. It was sort of up to the chiefs and, sort of a, what do you think about this person? Does this person need an extra day off here or something like that? Now it's pretty specific as far as the process we go through, the time that they're off, why they're getting that time off. It's something very unique amongst other departments throughout the country as far as what we have in place. Other cities have come to us and sort of looked at our model to see if it's something they want to implement. This was a partnership made with the chief's office, the policy we have in place now, but the chief's office and the peer support team sat down for several hours and talked about what's best practice, what's going to work for the members, what's going to work for the chief's office. So it was a coordinated effort to do what's best to help the members and in regards to them getting back to work, as well as what works for the chief's office as far as still maintaining the staffing they need and getting the officer back where he's healthy and has a healthy career.
Last question. Is there any coordination between your work and that of the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training?
We work with other agencies and training that's coordinated through responders, or I'm trying to think what the exact name, but through statewide coordination as far as the training that's put on to the people in the peer support teams. In order to be on the team, you have to go through a training course that certifies you to be on it, whether it's the TIC team or the peer support team. So we do statewide coordination with other agencies, Clackamas County, Eugene, Lane County, the state police, as well as the training, statewide coordination for training that goes on and bring in people in who are statewide certified to put on this training for us. I don't know if that exactly answers your question. I don't think it goes through DPSST, but it is statewide coordinated training process.
You're answering the question.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Okay, 2 short questions, then we have to move on. Our time is up. So V and then Rochelle.
Thanks for coming, Mike.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, is there any sort of a follow-up assessment or evaluation over time, 1 to 5 years, to see how the performance of the policies and how the officers' health is doing?
The checks we have in place now are up to a year. We have them see a mental health person. Obviously, our office is aware of officers that have been involved in shootings, and if we see performance issues or issues on the street that might need to be addressed, our peer support team is, I would say, we're really fast in responding to get in touch with that officer and maybe trying to steer them back towards a mental health visit. But I don't think we have anything to document, behavior past that 1-year mark, to answer your question.
Okay, Rochelle.
Yes, how is it looked at among officers if a particular officer self-initiates going to a mental health professional, not for a major incident like a shooting, but just because they're having trouble with their work or they're having trouble at home?
It's a really good question. If you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would have said that most officers would have looked down upon somebody going in for help. Times are changing. We've got a very strong peer support team. It's all confidential. The chief's office doesn't know who goes in for mental health visits other than officer-involved shootings. That's the only time they would have an idea that somebody went through the peer support system and saw a mental health professional. But it's not looked down in a negative way anymore. It's talked about in the academies that we go to. It's talked about in the Advanced Academy. We go in and teach a class in the Advanced Academy about seeking mental health professionals and maintaining the length of your career by getting that help and getting that check. And there's nothing wrong with sort of just doing a checkup like you see a doctor, to go in and touch bases with a mental health person. So in today's environment in the police culture, I don't think it's looked down at all. In fact, it's encouraged. We have officers that come to us and try to help their fellow officers to get them in to get some help.
Thank you so much for coming in and answering the question that was raised by the COAB. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
We're going to move on now to, excuse me, the Portland Police Bureau Annual Report. The settlement agreement reads, annually, PPB shall issue a publicly available annual report which shall include a summary of its problem-solving and community policing activities. A draft of the annual report shall be reviewed by the COAB before the report is finalized and released to the public. Once released, the Portland Police Bureau shall hold at least one meeting in each precinct area annually to present its annual report and to educate the community about its efforts in community policing in regards to the use of force and about PPB's policies and laws governing pedestrian stops and detentions, and bias-free policing, including a civilian's responsibilities and freedoms in such encounters. Now, you received the draft report on March 11th, and Captain Mike Marshman is here tonight to answer your questions about that draft. You have until April 1st to provide feedback. So we're not looking so much for feedback tonight as we're looking for your questions, clarifying questions that may help you formulate or better formulate your feedback. Okay, so thank you for being here, Mike.
Good evening. Thanks for having me back again. Excuse me. For those who don't know me, Mike Marshman. I'm a captain in the Portland Police Bureau. I run a strategic services division, and I'm the DOJ compliance coordinator. So again, it's nice to be back. Thank you, Kathleen, for reading paragraph 148, because I was going to read it too, but thanks for covering that. It's one of the many action items in the agreement. So also tonight, you were handed out this previous copy. So this is the March 2014 annual report, the first report that the Police Bureau made. We made this prior to the actual signing, well, the adoption of the agreement in the federal court and prior to the seating of the COAB. We were just trying to adhere to the agreement earlier.
Mike, could you speak into your microphone
Oh,
just a
sorry.
little bit better? More? Okay.
Is that, oh, there we go. I can
Yeah.
hear myself echo now. Is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So we attempted with our first report to do this one, and we handed it out. We put it on our website. Again, to try to adhere to paragraph 148 of the settlement agreement. The draft that you received, like Ms. Sadat said, it covers the 2015 calendar year. I've already noticed that we put the wrong date on it. We put 2015, so that one's already been caught. Same basic concept as our first report. It's also important to know that this report is a subset, if you will, of an annual report that the Police Bureau has been doing for many, many years. The bigger annual report, which is on our website, covers fiscal issues, covers hiring, covers some other data. So when we publish that, this will be included with it. But this report draft you have tonight and that you received earlier covers the agreement specifics. So in the beginning, for those who weren't here at the inception of the COAB meetings when I spoke with you, I described how the Police Bureau has broken the agreement into different sections to help us with implementation of the agreement. So this report has those sections in it. So it's an update on the behavioral health unit that everybody knows Lieutenant Hager runs, the training division, the professional standards division, which does internal affairs cases, the EIS system, which you're all familiar with now. Also has the force inspector position in here. Also community engagement and a little bit of data. So those are the 5 sections that we again included in this report for your review. We also added a message from Chief O'Day, who's here tonight, plus a description around our equity work. And now that the chief has hired an equity manager, discussion of our stops data report, because we increased the analysis this year in that. So there's quite a bit of good information in here. It's designed, at least I hope it's designed, that if you gave this to somebody walking down the street, if you will, that wasn't extremely familiar or maybe even familiar at all with what we do, that they could read this report and get hopefully a basic understanding of this part of the agreement. That is hard to do, so I'm really looking forward to your comments to make that better. One more part is once this report's finalized and published, the Police Bureau is going to have a meeting in each precinct to, again, meet with the public and have a more thorough, in-depth conversation about the content in this report and how it relates to the work that we're doing. Also, in the report that you received, these are not the pictures that are going to be in it. We have a graphic designer that's helping us with layout, and they just needed placeholders. So if you have ideas for pictures, please let us know. But please don't think those are the final ones. That's really just a placeholder for our in-house graphics designer. Hopefully, they had a chance to read it before tonight. Hopefully, it's self-explanatory. That's one of the goals. Again, like Ms. Sadat said, you have till April 1st to send us comments and suggestions. But to help you with those, I'm ready for questions, if you have any.
Tom?
In the professional standards division section, it has a statement, the division also assisted in drafting the new bias-free policing policy. The policy that the COAB passed recommendations on was titled Bias-Based Policing / Racial Profiling Prohibited. So does this mean there is now a new policy that's bias-free policing? Or are you talking about the old policy with a different name?
If I remember correctly, because we've been writing a number of directives to meet the state legislative change, we had to get a policy in prior to January 1st. So we had to work quickly on that one. I think we talked about that here.
Okay.
So that will again be up for review, but we wanted to make sure we did not meet the state requirement.
So have any of the COAB recommendations been used in revising or considering revisions to the bias-free policing policy?
I'm trying to think if that policy has made it to the executive reconciliation yet. But that said, all the comments that come in make it to that table for review. Some of the comments go through the COCL and the DOJ, but we get a copy from the Department of Justice on all the COAB comments. So the short, easy answer is all the comments that come in from the COCL, from the COAB, from any citizen, resident member that sends them in, we look at all of them.
Okay.
Other questions? Avell?
Thank you very much. Just to point out that in the message from the chief in that second paragraph, you'll want to correct the use of the word outreach, and it says Community Outreach Advisory Board. We do have, obviously, we have an outreach component to this work, which is carried out through our subcommittee led by Jimmy Johnson, but we are the Oversight Advisory Board. And I just want to make sure that, because words do carry such power, that we don't diminish the use of the word
No, thank you very much. I
oversight,
appreciate that.
especially in a message coming from the
It-
chief.
It's hard, yeah. Of course, he's
Okay.
right here. Sorry, Chief. It's hard to copy edit some of your own stuff sometimes, but thank you very much. That's why we need you to review this, so we'll definitely change that. So thank you very much for that.
Other questions?
I do.
Alicia?
Yeah, also in that same message from the chief, the last sentence says the equity lens is being applied to our policies as well. I'm not really sure I know exactly what that means.
I'm sorry, you done with the question? I think I might have cut you
No,
off. Did you? Okay. In our meetings, we do have our equity manager, who's doing a bunch of work along equity in the department and also throughout the city. And Elle Weatheroy is our equity manager. She puts her views and to make sure that we're adhering as best we can to the draft plan that she is working on. So do I have a specific answer of what an equity lens is? I mean, can I put like a definition of equity lens?
Well, I think it'll be important because, the county developed a equity lens, the state has one, so I'm curious if the city is going to be adopting the state's equity. It would be important to highlight what that is.
Okay.
There's a difference from saying I have an equity manager who is going to help us frame our policies with equity in mind versus actually using a tool that has been developed. So I'd be interested in knowing a little bit more about that.
Perfect. Yes, perfect. Great question. Thank you.
More questions? Jimmy? Jimmy, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm just turning his phone off.
Oh, okay. Okay. Tom?
In the stops data section, there's some general language, I call it general because it doesn't really identify specific steps being taken. There's some general language about the Bureau looking into bias-free policing. But the language I see is the same that's been in the racial profiling plan since 2009. And with all due respect, I do not see the Bureau having really taken any meaningful steps to reduce discriminatory policing. And this document, I don't believe, identifies anything specific either. So is there really some new initiative that this is referring to that isn't clear, or is it this sort of just the same old status quo?
Well, I apologize for not bringing the STOPS data report. Have you by chance read the latest one?
Well, the data may be more refined, but I'm talking about trying to change the data to stop the profiling. So is the Bureau, is there something in this that is more specific? Because I don't see it, and I'm just trying to clarify that in my own mind.
I mean, I guess my answer would be yes. In our latest STOPS data report, we tried to make it more refined, try to take it to the next level, if you will, to see, for example, in that report, we put North Precinct, I believe it was afternoon shift patrol traffic stops, showed an area that should have more investigation, if you will, into what may be causing that higher number of traffic stops on African Americans, as an example. We're still working on that next report to dig deeper into why might that be. So the answer would be yes, we're doing more looking into it. Do I have answers as to the causality of why that number shows what it is? Unfortunately, today I don't. Hopefully in the next STOPS data report that comes out, we'll have more clarity. And then as we kind of continue longitudinally down as the years go on, get to that. So the answer is I don't have a specific answer as to why, but the refined data hopefully points us to areas to look at to hopefully determine why.
One last question.
Sure.
So of any of the COAB recommendations to stop racial profiling, the 9 that were approved, are those being taken into account in trying to figure out a way to stop it?
I have those. I am positive all my analysts, because the STOPS data report comes actually out of my shop. So the analysts I know have looked at all those, but off the top of my head, how they implemented those recommendations and what they found, I don't have a specific answer.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the data collection, the analysis of the data. I'm talking about steps, action being taken by the Bureau.
So maybe I could help here. You're talking about how are the recommendations being operationalized in terms of the day-to-day work of the Bureau?
That's one question. Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to determine whether anything beyond refining the data, because you've had the data, the Bureau's had the data for 14 years now, I think. So I'm trying to figure out if the Bureau has real steps in place to do something to address what the data demonstrates. And that is discriminatory policing.
It's part of the equity plan that's still in process. It's part of the updating the racial profile plan. It's part of, yes, I mean, to me, the data isn't the end all be all, but it's a pointer to where we should look at. We do know now areas to look at. Will I have a specific answer for you anytime soon? No, because I'm not, I guess, short-sighted enough to say that these next steps will resolve the problem. It's just not that easy. Are we going in the right direction, I think, to dig into what we could do with your, the COLE recommendations, public recommendations, best practices across the country to address these? Yes. In specificity, as you know, and I think everybody here knows, it's a complex topic with many variables. Data isn't everything, but I think data helps inform next steps.
Okay. V?
I think these are important questions, and I want to thank the chair of the DSUFCS, Tom. for approaching them, because the numbers in Multnomah County in terms of African Americans not only going into the system, but then continue, the process. And I'm not assessing blame to the PPB. Obviously, it's a many-layered, highly intricate, highly manifold societal issue. But I think any time that we can move proactively each step with each system, I think that's a positive move. So I appreciate the PPB's work in doing that. And hopefully, who knows, I'm always optimistic. Maybe there'll be something that is some mechanism. You always talk about, you guys are great, talking about tools and mechanisms to assess the problem, evaluate it, bring in new people and new voices so we can stop it. It's beyond shameful, and I'm not putting that on you. It's hurtful, right? Just as an independent citizen, I'm hurt by the numbers that Multnomah County has against African Americans. So, thank you.
Thank you, V. Rochelle?
On that same page on the STOPS data, I don't know if I'm reading it correctly, but at the very end, the last word is feed hyphen, and then it go into the black section here, or I'm not reading it correctly?
It should say feedback.
Well, it doesn't anyplace. It's like it's cut off in the middle.
Yeah, I'll check on that. Could be a formatting issue again with those graphics placeholders.
Okay. And then in the black section, there seems to be a formatting thing too, because it starts with the word stops with a small s and
Right.
a period, and I don't know what that's related to either.
Yeah, it's probably another formatting issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Philip?
Yes, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for all the information. It's interesting to see how the PPB works and how we're working to improve the system, which is wonderful. The effort and the mission is right on track. But I feel like I could ask, and you may already have data that shows where the problems are and how change may impact future stops. It does show a lot about what is done, what can be done, but what about an outcome or some results page that would give the community a sense of security, that the officers are actually trying to improve on these bad data statistics? Do you have any more information about that?
We do, and I guess it then becomes down to if the goal of the annual report is to just inform, just a summary, not super detailed on problem solving and community policing activities. I guess it's a blend of how granular you might want to get in all these issues. I mean, I could easily write a 10 or 12 page booklet like this into something that's 40 pages. So I don't know of where a good place is to give general overview versus going down wormholes. We need to, I mean, all these questions tonight are perfect and spot on, so I appreciate them. Where's a good cutoff point for granular data on a booklet that's supposed to be a general informative publication?
Alicia, yeah.
Go ahead.
Mine
and I'll
is
go
short.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So where do we send updates for spelling errors? Just to you, or just tell you right now, or? Mary Claire, okay, I'm good.
Okay,
I got
perfect.
it, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was trying not to get into all of the formatting and just highlight issues, so I'll send them to the appropriate place. I do want to go back to Philip's point, and I think what Tom was getting at, and this is just a suggestion. It might be, I realize that you're trying to be efficient with the space and to kind of clearly communicate. In an effort to do that, it might be, and I think I sound like a broken record saying this, it might be important on each of these sections to just simply say what was asked of us, what we've accomplished and what we're still working on. Consistently in each of those sections so that it's very clear. The paragraph format is very clumped, and you miss some very important features, like now that you have 105 officers ECIT trained, you kind of have to dig for that. It'd be nice to highlight those things. So these are aesthetic things that I will send in, but I think what Philip and everyone's trying to communicate is there is a way to communicate it, what you've done and what you need to work on to both us and to the larger community. And there's also an opportunity to find ways to integrate some of the work that we've been here now for over a year. We've been making recommendations, working hard, and I think that what Tom's question was, or the spirit of it, was how is our work reflected in this PPB annual report, the work of the COAB, the time that we've given. And so just some thought to be given, recognizing that it too is a process, that you all had started a process before we came. There were some things you've already worked on and accomplished. It's just not evident. And so I think we keep asking you the same question, like, well, what happened to those recommendations we worked on? So maybe if we can find a better way to communicate that, it would save us all a lot of heartache and time.
Yeah, so three quick answers back to you. I'll go out of order. So your middle part, yes, we'll definitely work on that. The recommendations, you're talking about the policies specifically. I do know, speaking with the DOJ, the Department of Justice, that they will get back to the COAB specifically, I believe, recommendation by recommendation, because it goes from the COAB to the COCL to the Department of Justice, and then to us. To work on. So the Department of Justice, and they're here tonight, so if I'm speaking out of turn, I apologize, but it's my understanding, I should say, that they will respond back to the COAB on every single recommendation, whether they approve, disapprove, or what their thoughts are. The first point you made, and I agree completely, again, what we gave you is just a draft of the wording, and I apologize for the spelling errors. But I agree, the 105 ECITs, I mean, that's a good thing. We should put that. So I kind of refer back to the first report you did, which, again, this is all the graphics that we don't have. And in the middle section, we kind of highlighted with the green and the green, a little bubble picture here, the 3 mobile crisis units to hopefully pop out. We'll have that stuff in the final report, but frankly, our graphics designers is the in-house person, so I couldn't get that point done until this. So those pieces, which I believe we should highlight, like the one you example, we'll point that out in a more colorful, different font, different graphics art style.
Just one comment.
Okay, Tom.
Mike, I may have missed something, but it has been my understanding that the DOJ has told us that they are not going to specifically get back to us about recommendations.
No, they have said they will.
Okay, I may have missed that.
Yeah.
I did not hear that. Sorry.
That's okay. I believe Brian Bueller, Joan Geisler, and I've had other meetings with them, that the feedback loop on all the COAB recommendations will be directly back to you from the Department of Justice.
Do you want to say anything, Brian?
That's right.
Jared. Yeah.
We're going to take all of the final policies once they're finalized, and our responses to your recommendations will be included.
Does he need a microphone?
In the policies we provide out.
Did you hear that? No. Okay. Can we give you a mic, Jared? And I'm sorry I called you Brian.
What's that?
Yeah, it has been determined, Jared Hager, Department of Justice, and just make sure I'm not speaking out of turn, but the DOJ is going to provide all the final policies back to the COAB with responses to the recommendations. Does that make sense?
Is there a timeline for that?
Yeah, I think the question probably is timeline.
Yeah, I don't have a timeline. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an iterative process. And,
Okay.
As of now, I think we've got one policy.
One.
And there are other hang-ups that have nothing to do with the COAB's work or the PPP's work. They're just, it's a process, and that is in DC, so I can't speak directly to the timeline.
Thank you, Jared. Okay. Philip?
I want to go back and I have a follow-up question. I'd like to make a suggestion. When the recommendations are approved and go up the chain to the DOJ and come back to PBB, and those changes are implemented, I think it would be good to write that down and say how it's improving PBB, so the community can see that it is changing, that things are changing, officers are changing. In order for the community to feel there's more of a sense of transparency and safety, I think it's important for the community to see how the changes are happening. So that's just something I want to put out there for you. It might be helpful for you to say, we've accepted these recommendations and we're making these changes. So that's something I just wanted to put out there for you.
Okay. So we're out of time for this item. I suggest that you make sure you get your feedback in by April 1st, and that means you can do it individually. And we're sending it to you, Mike? Or are we sending it to Mary Claire?
Both of us would be just fine.
Okay. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For your help. Okay, we're going to move on to recommendations here. And for those of you who are new to the room, this is our voting tracking system. So as people vote, you'll see a mark appear in the column that indicates their vote. And if the recommendation passes and the machine stays on, there'll be a little green box at the bottom that says it passed. And if it doesn't, there'll be an indication that it did not. We're going to look first at the recommendation 102215-4A. It's a use of force recommendation, which would modify a portion of the recommendation number 102215-4 to add an intent element to when deadly force may be used. Okay, and I'm going to read it to you. The COAB has approved recommendation 102215-4, which contains revisions to Portland Police Bureau Directive 1010, use of force. The recommendation contains a detailed prohibition against the use of deadly force except in very limited extraordinary circumstances. This recommendation would modify a portion of recommendation number 102215-4 to add an intent element to when deadly force may be used. The modification to the relevant portion of the previously approved recommendation is contained in the addition of paragraph C as set forth in italics below. Deadly force may only be used in circumstances where the threat of death or serious physical injury to an officer or others is immediate. A danger is immediate only when an objectively reasonable officer would believe that A, the suspect has the means or instrumentalities to do so, B, the suspect has the opportunity and ability to use the means or instrumentalities to cause death or serious physical injury, and C, the suspect is acting or threatening to use the available means or instruments to cause death or serious physical injury. Tom?
This recommendation was presented and approved with paragraphs A and B, but the community, a couple people particularly, thought that there ought to be something that sort of addressed the imminency or the intent of the person against whom the deadly force is going to be used. And so the subcommittee, the data subcommittee, use of force subcommittee, went back and looked at that. And actually the Seattle policy had language that, again, it didn't use the word intent, but we've sort of used the word intent as a shorthand figure of speech. But Seattle had language to the effect that appears in C. And C, we think, makes the additional language that's important to clarify that it needs to be something the suspect is actually doing or threatening to do, as opposed to something that's more general and suspected by the officer before that deadly force can be used. Also, the police advisor on the subcommittee, Paul Meyer, didn't think that adding C changed even the existing Bureau policy on the use of deadly force. I think it does, but so there's been no opposition or statements opposing this particular recommendation, and the subcommittee thinks it's important.
Okay, I have listed for public comment Dan Handelman and David Keefe Davis. Dan? Pass, okay. Mr. Davis? Mr. Davis? Okay. Discussion on the COAB. Rochelle and Bud.
I just wanted to make it clear that we are not using the word intent, although Tom used that word to talk about it. In my opinion, you can't know what a person's intent is. So we are not using that. We're looking at behavior, that the person is acting or threatening, and we're not concerned with the intent in their mind.
Thank you, Rochelle. Other discussion? Bud?
So we have read, probably all of us, in the news recently about the Los Angeles Police Department and their dramatic rise in police shootings, many of which have been of unarmed civilians, unarmed citizens, and in the majority of those cases, people who were actually reaching for something else, such as a cell phone. So the question I have is, how would this policy affect the possibility of that happening here in Portland? And how does this addition of intentionality play into that, if at all?
Tom, you want to respond?
Well, I would hope it would cause officers to pause before using deadly force when there may be some suspicion the person is armed, but the person isn't actually doing something. Again, Rochelle's got it correct. It's the behavior. And as an example, I think this policy would have prohibited the shooting of Aaron Campbell in the back when he was running away, and he didn't have a gun out. There may have been suspicion that he had a gun, and had that policy been in place, I think the shooting would have been found to be out of policy. So I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's an improvement. I guess that's my answer.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay. More comments or questions? More discussion from the COAB? Philip?
I do. I move to recommend or approve the motion.
Second.
Philip has made a motion to accept the proposal, and Abel has seconded that motion. I'm calling the question. I will call the roll. Bud?
Aye.
Abel?
Aye.
Jimmy?
Aye.
Ime?
Aye.
Medina? Maria?
Aye.
Alicia?
Yes.
Revere?
Aye.
Steenson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Silver.
Excuse me?
You didn't call me.
I didn't? Okay, Silver, sorry.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I should ask that, since I think all the voting members said yes. Okay, so the motion passes. The next one is recommendation 111215-3A. aerosol restraints. This would modify 111215-3 that was previously considered by the COAB. And the idea is to clarify when the use of pepper spray is authorized and when it is not. So it reads, revise Directive 1040, aerosol restraints, to clarify when the use of aerosol restraints, pepper spray, is authorized. The use of pepper spray for crowd control or in crowds should be prohibited. Tom?
Just for background, if you recall, the subcommittee brought forth a recommendation as to the use of pepper spray, and it was approved by the COAB. But this is a specific provision that was not part of that recommendation. And it has to do with the issue of whether pepper spray should be used in crowds or for crowd control. And typically, this occurs in one form or another during a public protest. And the concern expressed by the community and members of the subcommittee is that too often the pepper spray is used indiscriminately, and so it's not targeted in these crowd situations, and you end up pepper spraying people that aren't doing anything that would deserve some use of force, and particularly children, and in some cases older people, people that are disabled. And crowds just present a situation where it's virtually impossible to target individuals because of the way the pepper spray disperses. And so the subcommittee felt that it should be prohibited.
Okay. I have Dan and David Davis listed as wanting to comment on this recommendation.
Good evening, Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch. I think this is as somebody who's out in the streets a lot, I think this is a good recommendation. I also want to point out that even when the police do target a specific individual, we saw the photograph that went around the world from the Oregonian of the person being pepper sprayed right in the mouth. And there was actually another incident very similar to that on May Day last year where the police were within 2 feet of somebody pepper spraying them, and we caught that on one of our Cop Watch cameras. So it's not supposed to be used that way, and I don't think we can trust the police not to use it that way. That's very dangerous to go that close with pepper spray, especially the severity, the hotness of this pepper spray that they have right now. So thank you for your recommendation.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the pepper spray used at protests up front, and I was at the May Day protest last year, and the cops were totally out of hand and just at their worst behavior I've seen in a long time. And they came up and started ripping up people's protest signs, and I have that on video, just cops going crazy, indiscriminately spraying whole crowds of people, women, whoever, children. They didn't care. They were just spraying it. I have multiple video of that if any of you guys ever want to see it, you know. But and there's plenty of other people that filmed the police, and they launched a bunch of flash bang grenades and all kinds of other stuff, and just indiscriminately were spraying everyone for no reason. This was even when they were retreating on the back of their little military riot van equipment, and, you know, dressed in their stormtrooper gear and everything. And, you know, they were definitely not fearful of their safety. It was just a retaliatory, sadistic use of pepper spray on protesters, and it's used actually to deter them from coming back again. And I hear what happens. I hear the people that say that they're not going to go back to another protest because they don't want to be pepper sprayed, or people talking about bringing clear umbrellas so they can guard themselves against next year's May Day. You know, that's one
Time's up,
way
Mr.
the
Davis.
community can protect itself, is to bring a nice clear umbrella and
Mr. Davis, your time's up.
guard themselves, because these guys just spray indiscriminately.
Thank you.
And that's just the reality of the situation.
I was curious, I was hoping either.
You want to ask him a question?
Is
then?
that okay?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if, when the sheriff deployed the pepper spray, if in fact it proved to be helpful in terms of de-escalating or keeping the sheriff out of trouble, or if it in fact escalated the situation.
All it did was escalate the situation, and it definitely wasn't for any officer's safety or the safety of anyone else. It was just
Okay, so if I'm hearing your,
over-policing.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, Keith, the short answer is no?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, V. Do you want to, okay, come up and,
My name is Robert West from the Police 911, and I seen a video from last May Day where a little girl was sitting on a guy's shoulders, and she got pepper sprayed in her face, and there was no disciplinary action whatsoever to the officers, because the officers don't discipline their own because of the blue line. It's pretty sad when police officers use weapons against children. And I wanted to bring that fact up. Also, with the clear umbrella, Keith missed one portion, and that's you twirl the umbrella. So when the pepper spray hits the umbrella, it bounces back at the officers. And that's the best way to defend yourself against pepper spray, besides using masks and stuff like that. And that's what I had to say.
thank you.
I actually know the
Okay,
person who
you,
was the parent.
Mr. Davis, you've had your turn. Mr. Davis, you've had your turn. Discussion on the COAB, please. Unless there's a, yes.
I'd like to hear from Sergeant Hughes and Lieutenant Hager, if you, both of you have perspectives to share.
Yeah, is that coming through? With the use of pepper spray when it comes to crowd control, and I actually wish Vince was here tonight because he is part of RRT and actually could probably speak a lot more about this than I will be able to. But the use of pepper spray in crowds has to be authorized by the incident commander to be able to use. It's not, we can just use it indiscriminately. It has to be authorized by the incident commander. There are, at times, I believe, exceptions to that rule, and, you know, please from over there correct me if I'm wrong to this, but, you know, if you've got a crowd overwhelming you, and that is a tool that is available, I look at that as better than impact weapons. So if that tool can be used over an impact weapon being used to protect a store from being looted or rioted or whatever it is, and things being taken or broken, or preventing officers and or people from being hurt, I look at that as a much less of an impact versus an impact tool, much less of a tool than an impact tool to be used. But it has to be on the authorization of an incident commander to use it. It's not just officers can spray independently on their own. They have to act within the authorization of an incident commander, and or the other exception would be is if there wasn't time to get that authorization and the sergeant in charge of that field force, mobile field force, gave the authorization.
Thank you. Tosh?
So I think I'll address this from a little bit larger perspective, and I think I said this at the last meeting, so it's worth repeating. I think that there needs to be some caution when you use things like always and never. Always and never really mean always and never. And there are exceptions to almost every rule that's out there. And I think that, when you look at crowd control specifically, you could say, okay, it's prohibited and it's never used again, and the end result will not be what people are looking for. So, pepper spray is one of the lowest besides just using your hands, which is almost impossible in crowd control situations. Officers are typically outnumbered greatly. So, and like Michelle said, there's a lot of control. It's not like it was years ago in our crowd control situations where cops just indiscriminately use pepper spray. The decision to use it is the incident commander's decision. And so I just would caution the always and the never when you're looking at different things, because there's going to be a situation where this might be completely appropriate and is going to save property and or lives depending on what's going on out there. So.
Mr. Davis, I'm going to ask you to refrain from comment. Thank you. Bud.
Keith, cut it out. This is not your mother's basement. Just behave.
Bud, please.
Bud. Mr. Davis, you do not have the floor. The COAB is conducting its business. Please be respectful. Thank you. Mr. Pulis.
So, Tasha, the question I have is this. If we put this policy in place, and then if something happens where an officer ends up using pepper spray in a crowd control situation, which according to this would now be prohibited. So they had some sort of exigent circumstances, and they went ahead and used it. What would happen then? Would they immediately be disciplined, or would some other process happen?
There's always a process for discipline. There's always a process. So, when you say immediate, there's a lot of different actions. The chief is here, and I'm sure he would say if you violate the policy and you use pepper spray and it says don't use it, eventually he's going to sustain discipline against you. So regardless of your intention when you did it, that won't matter. If you violate the policy and that complaint is sustained, you're going to get discipline.
Thank you.
Okay. V?
I just want to make a quick point. I was also there that day, and number one, it wasn't a PPB officer. It was somebody from Multnomah County, and the deployment looked very offhanded, and
Multnomah County.
It wasn't cool. It wasn't a responsible-looking officer, but it was not a PPB officer. But it's enough to be alarming. And there was a child that was affected.
Yeah.
Thank you, V. Philip?
I have a question for Michelle Hughes. You stated that there's an incident someone responsible for approving that deployment of pepper spray. Can you clarify if it's just incident related, like individual permission, or is it overall crowd control permission for all officers to go ahead and use that pepper spray or aerosol force? Can you expand on the permissions that are granted?
Yeah, so no, it's not an overall use. So we may have several different mobile field forces in different parts of the city. And it would be that specific person in charge of that mobile field force asking for permission. So it's not an overall permission for everybody. It would be very, I guess it's location specific.
Rochelle?
Okay, just to follow up, real quick question. So this is focusing on crowd control, this recommendation. Does that mean that a permission that's given is all right for use on one person or one suspect, or is it permission to use on an open crowd of people? Is that fair to say?
Well, it would probably vary, based on our policy, we try to target the person that's causing the problem. But if it's a whole crowd rushing at us, that might be the whole problem. So it would probably be very incident specific. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. Rochelle?
When the Data Systems Use Force Compliance Committee was working on this, there was originally some discussion about putting forth a recommendation to prohibit pepper spray altogether. There are a lot of problems with pepper spray. Nobody exactly knows how hot it is and what it can do to people, what it can do to children, what it can do to elderly, disabled, et cetera, et cetera. But we chose not to do that and made some recommendations about its use. When we brought it forth to the larger COAB, it was the community, the people out there saying, hey, wait a minute, what about its use in crowd control? Because that's where people who are innocent are being injured. Because even if a police officer attempts to spray one person in a crowd, the pepper spray is broadcast. I think that's a word that the police use. So that the person on the right and the person on the left and the person in behind and maybe the person in front all get a piece of that pepper spray. And the committee came back to look at that and is asking now for your consideration to prohibit pepper spray only in the circumstance where it's crowd control and innocent people can get hurt.
Abel?
Thank you. Tom, would you or other members of the committee speak to what is the language from the Seattle policy, the DOJ consent decree policy?
The Seattle policy allows it, depending upon the threat, the nature of the resistance or the threat that's being posed. Some jurisdictions, like New Orleans, prohibits it altogether. They don't allow pepper spray at all. And so they deal with crowd control using other means of force if necessary. And again, as Rochelle discussed, we just felt that it's just too indiscriminate. But the Seattle policy does allow it.
Alicia?
So in reviewing the pros, I just want to read through it and sort of juxtapose 2 and 3. So it says, the prohibition may lead to the PPB developing or finding safer options than the use of pepper spray for crowd control. I was interested in this recommendation of learning what those other safer options might be. That's one point. Number 3 is the subcommittee does not believe that this limited prohibition on the use of pepper spray will lead to an increase in the use of tasers or other means. So it's sort of confusing and conflicting, right? So if we haven't identified what, and you just mentioned that Louisiana or wherever you said, I think Louisiana it uses other means of force. And so if the goal is to be minimalist in how much harm we do, first to try to do no harm, but to eliminate an option in crowd control, then what would be the safer options? Because if you eliminate this one, which seems to be, none of them are ideal, so we're always going to be choosing the lesser of several evils. What would that look like?
Well, every other use of force is targeted by the nature of the force. So if you have, first of all, let me back up. The recommendations from the subcommittee approved by the COAB places all less lethal uses of force, beanbag shotguns, tasers, and pepper spray at the aggressive resistance level. So you can't use that force under the recommendations that we've passed unless the person is threatening or engaged in actual physical harm I don't.
So I get that, Tom. I'm saying what, if, let's stay focused on the question. My question was, based on your research, what would be the safer options? That's really all I'm asking. Because if you eliminate, because in 2 and 3, it seems to be sort of contradictory. So what would be the safer option?
The problem is that the option of using pepper spray causes injury to innocent people. When you use a baton, if that's what's necessary, or if you use your fist, or if you use a ballistic shield, those are targeted at individuals, and they don't spray the harm. They don't injure people who are innocent. That's
what type of injury are we talking about? Because if I witness someone being beat by a baton, that can cause psychological injury. That's what I'm saying. It's like we can get to this point where we are, who gets to define what injury is and who's not. I mean, I understand your point about targeted, but I'm just saying it kind of gets back to Lieutenant Hager's point. And I believe there's a point of convergence here where we agree that I think everybody agrees that you want to try to use the least amount of force as possible, and in many cases, not at all. But what does that look like reasonably and practically?
I don't think it's going to be a taser. I haven't seen any or heard of any instances where people are being tasered in crowd control, so I don't think that's going to be the weapon of choice. Ballistic shields can be used and should be used more often, in our opinion, and that's an available tool. They're often brought to crowd situations, and we think that would be an option. I don't know what the other options might be, but if the Bureau needs an option, I'm sure they can find one. Maybe that would help push them to develop something that wasn't going to injure innocent people. And again, what the community has told us their concern is that innocent people are being injured by pepper spray because you can't control it in a crowd. You're going to injure people who are innocent. That's the problem.
Ava?
Tom, did you all look at the Seattle policy? Again, it's part of the consent decree there. Do you have any idea of how they discussed this same subject in Seattle, and if they explored other options? Because the question I'm hearing from Dr. Moreland Kapuya is, what are some other options, and what does research tell us might be some other options?
Well, I mentioned the ballistic shield. Sometimes that also means hands-on. And essentially, the current policy that Portland has mirrors the Seattle policy. And we're not quarreling with that. We just don't think that's a good policy because its use injures people that are innocent. And we just didn't think, and the community told us they didn't think that innocent people should be injured.
I guess what I'm wrestling with is I'm sorry, I might be out of order.
You are.
Okay.
Let's go with,
Can I get in order?
we'll fill up and then you'll be in order.
Okay.
I can really appreciate this discussion. I think we're having a good, meaty discussion here with a lot of different perspectives, and I really appreciate that. One thing I want to put out for thought is crowd control typically happens in a protesting environment, and some of those people are protesting peacefully. They are chanting, using their voices, protesting by holding signs, and there's a high chance that those people aren't doing any harm to anyone. So when officers use pepper spray, that escalates the situation. People see this happening, and that can lead to more escalation that is out of control because the situation becomes more out of control because of the use of pepper spray, because innocent people are being sprayed, and this increases escalation. And I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Alicia?
Yeah, I don't think there's any disagreement there. Again, maybe I'm not being clear. I guess what I'm just, if you eliminate one option and then make the presupposition is by eliminating one that it has no impact on what other options might be used. I don't know that that's the right. The syllogism breaks down for me there. It doesn't make sense to me, but I can rest with that. What I am interested in seeing more of is what the literature suggests on what the other safer, reasonable options are. And I would also like us to consider that if in fact we prohibit the use of pepper spray because we're saying that it injures other people physically, fine, let's widen that definition of injury. So if I'm no longer using pepper spray, but I'm using a shield or a billy club, and I am in the audience and I am next to someone who is beaten by the billy club, I was not physically injured, but there is a psychological injury. So I'm wanting to make that point, and I'm repeating myself very intentionally here, because I think we get down this slippery slope where folks try to define things to the point where you define it so narrowly that you miss a number of other things. That's really my point.
Rochelle, and then V.
I think, Alicia, there is certainly a chance that there is a psychological impact of you not being hurt, but seeing the child next to you hurt. And it would be impossible for us to sit and measure here what is the biggest impact for one person to be hit by a billy club or a child, innocent child being sprayed accidentally or whatever by pepper spray. You know, both situations are bad, and I think what Tom said at the beginning, this is not the perfect answer. It is our best answer at this point.
Right, and I'm just wanting you to be open to the feedback that's being given.
Absolutely.
Today. Thank you.
Okay. V.
I appreciate your points. They're important and they're valid, not only for the activists and protesters in the street, but to the safety and psychological health of the PPB officers too. I really believe in the creativity and genius of the PPB and the community in that I strongly believe that they can come up with a plan in terms of crowd control so that there isn't a bunching, for instance, around the railroad tracks and the rest of Portlanders aren't able to get home without using pepper spray. Because from what I saw, it escalated the situation. And if it would have been great if, you know, in hindsight, if they could have come in 25 minutes earlier and provided a way to split up the crowd in a way that they weren't being overcome. Because certainly the sound vehicle, I'm not sure what it's called exactly. LRAD. There were way too many protesters, mainly young men, and they were way too rowdy and completely out of control, and I was worried for the PPB officers. And that was a difficult situation, and we have Mayday right ahead of us. And I know that this isn't obviously because of all the time, it's not going to happen in 30 days. But it would be wonderful if the PPB could figure out a way to split up those factions in the protest groups as a whole, because often you'll have, you know, somewhere between 10 or 15 different groups coming together during May Day, and they converge and they come out and they can. So I think there are ways to both respect the lives of the PPB officers, get everybody home on time, not block the buses, and allow free speech to happen in a safe way. And if people are on the LRAD truck, that I'm a protester, I go out and I protest, I would not do that. It's not something that I find particularly respectful, or it's not safe behavior. So I might have answered your question.
Okay.
I think there's alternatives, and I really trust that the PPB can come up with them.
Okay. We spent a lot of time on this one. I have two more people, Maria and Tasha, and then I think I'll entertain a motion. Maria?
I was just gonna say something about being an organizer and a protester, which I also have been for a long time, but, and maybe I just do things in a really legal way, but there is a thing called permits, where you get a permit from the city and you have people working with you to make sure that traffic gets aimed in the right area. The police are working with you. I feel like such a creep sometimes for taking this stance, but I've been involved with a number of protests that were permitted. And to say that what happened last year at May Day, there was some issues around that. I was there. I was one of the people who helped organize the May Day rally from the very beginning, and we did have a permit, and there was a group that led a group off the permitted route, and the police asked the people to please step back into the permitted route, and there was some chaos there. Sometimes when people organize, they want to create conflict, and I get it. It takes all kind of people to be active, to create change. I get it. But just when you're the kind of people that want to create change and you want to create chaos, I mean, really, but what do you expect, really? What do you think is going to happen?
Right. I saw you down there.
Yeah, and I was very upset.
Yes,
So,
right.
because I know that I had been working on planning that rally for months.
I know.
So my point is that I don't know what should happen for crowd control. I don't know. But when we're talking in terms of like protesting and things like that, there is a way that we can work with the police, and maybe, you know, I don't know what kind of training the police have for working with people that are from groups that, you know, are creating social change, but maybe there can be some changes in that, and maybe that can play into whatever alternatives can be used that are not tasers or pepper spray. I don't know, but I feel like I would be a sucker if I didn't speak out as a legal organizer.
Thank you, Maria. Tasha?
I think what I'm gonna say kind of follows with what was just said, because what I'm gonna say is that the way the Portland Police Bureau addresses crowd control today in a much different manner than it used to, and we really do work hard with people who draw permits and organize. But outside of that, the sergeants who are out there working the street also work very hard for those little spring up instant kind of protest to allow people to exercise their right to express what they're thinking and feeling. So, and that includes doing things that sometimes it's not permitted, it's not legal to take the street, but they will occasionally allow that. So we've made a lot of progress, and I think it is important to remember that that we still have a duty to protect people. So if the protest is going to get out of control, there is the potential for injury, and it's not just the conflict or any conflict that would occur between the police and the protesters. It is what the protesters might do outside of just marching. So I appreciate what you had to say about the police working with you to do protests, because they actually will put everything they have into making sure people can do what they want to do.
Okay, I'm ready to call for the question. So
I make
do I have
a motion
Yeah.
that we vote on this recommendation.
I second.
So we have Philip, who's made the motion, V, who's seconded it. The recommendation reads, revise Directive 1040, aerosol restraints, to clarify when the use of aerosol restraints, pepper spray, is authorized. The use of pepper spray for crowd control or in crowds should be prohibited. Okay, I'll call the roll. Pulis.
Abstain.
Gardner. Oh, she's not here. Gordley.
Abstain.
Johnson.
Nay.
Sorry, can you?
Ime.
Sorry,
Curley.
Johnson, was that aye or nay?
Huh?
Yes.
What's the question?
Jimmy, was that a yay?
Nay.
Nay, thank you.
Oh.
Ime.
Yes.
I abstain for now.
Okay. Myron?
Nay.
Alicia?
Also no.
I can't hear, yeah, nay?
No.
Okay.
No.
V?
Yes.
Silver?
Yes.
Steenson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Okay. The recommendation fails. We have, what, 5 yeses and 3 noes and 3 abstentions?
5 yeses, 3 noes, 3 abstentions.
3 abstentions, yeah. I'd like to take a few minutes for the 3 people who've signed up, 2 people who've signed up to make additional public comments before we take a break. Somebody else who wants to talk? Okay, so they are Dan Handelman, David Davis, and Ann Casper. And you're limited to 2 minutes each. Please come forward. This is not specific to recommendations, but general public comment.
Hi, Dan Handelman again, Portland Cop Watch. I sent out an analysis today of the compliance report the COCL made back in October. It was like a 72-page document with a 100-page attachment that you all got. And there was a very, very, very brief presentation about it. And I really think the COAB should be more involved in it. And we wrote a whole thing, and I hope that you had a chance to read it. I'll try to get to some points. 2 minutes is not a lot of time. I think the Bureau's annual report, there's nothing in the settlement agreement that says it has to be a small booklet that looks like a comic book, and I really think that it's kind of insulting that that's what they're going to put out as an annual report. I'm hoping that we're going to get more material and more statistics, specifically about force and stops and how they change over time or not, and how many stops there are against people of color. Since they're mentioning it in the text, that graphic should include those numbers. I think it would be great if the DOJ comes back not with the final directives, but the directives in their final draft form and say, this is what we're thinking of doing. Is that okay? So that the COAB is involved in the final decision making. I want to talk a little bit about flashbangs being used at protest actions too, which is another issue for another time. So some of the things that are in this analysis that we found, and again, you should read the whole report if you have time, is that tasers are used against armed suspects only 24% of the time that they're used. Guns are pointed at armed people only 29% of the time that they are used. The COCL refers to training as being at the heart of the agreement, yet for months COAB members have been requesting training materials to assess compliance and have been denied either by the COCL or the Bureau or both. There's also a slew of abbreviations that are used and lots of jargon that's used, even though one of the things they recommend is for the Bureau not to use jargon. And I could read them all because it's very hilarious, but again, there's not enough time. And there's another thing that's very concerning is that the COCL seems to be interpreting the thing where this says the taser should not be used for pain compliance against somebody in mental health crisis. And they're making a distinction between the use of a taser when you launch the probes, which incapacitates somebody, and the drive stun. And I don't think that's what the meaning of the agreement is. I think the point is, don't use a taser against somebody in mental health crisis. So I hope that you will read that and give feedback before the new semi-annual report comes out, which I think will be in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Davis?
So I wanted to point out that you're totally wrong about permits. You don't need permits in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
You stated that it's illegal and that sometimes the Portland police work with people doing illegal protests. Well, you need to read the Oregon State Constitution, and you're allowed to march in the streets unpermitted as long as you're not blocking traffic and you keep it moving. So you don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I guess not.
Okay, and
I wasn't paid to be an organizer.
So you can just look at the Constitution too yourself, because if you're an organizer, you should know at least the laws about protesting in the state of Oregon and the Constitution, and that we have a little better
Mr. Davis, I'm going to ask you to respect the COAB members, please.
I'm talking and saying that people should read the Constitution in Oregon and they
That's
don't
fine.
know what they're
Well, you
talking
can tell me
about.
that
So
at break.
that's
Okay,
just
Maria,
reality.
Maria.
You know, I'm trying to
I'm tired of him.
bring some light to the conversation and instead of.
Mr. Davis, your time is running out, so you should go
No,
ahead. and-
actually, I'm only at 1 minute right here on my camera, so I know exactly what my time is. So, I'm actually, you know, right now facing multiple trials for filming the police too. So, I'd like to see you guys bring the whole filming the police thing into the narrative of COAB, because a lot of us actually that do film the police, you know, we're being targeted and harassed and facing criminal trials, targeted at protests, you know, all kinds of different stuff like that, and facing criminal trials simply for filming. So I think that you guys need to work on some type of policy amongst COAB so that the Portland police aren't just targeting journalists and people who film the police from our community and cop watchers. So if you can start looking into the fact that
Mr.
journalists
Davis, your
are
time
being
is up.
targeted, and hopefully you guys will go attend the Robert West hearing at the CRC. He's one of the
Mr.
and
Davis,
also
your
one
time
of
is
your
up.
COAB members.
Your
Jakari
time is up,
Jackson,
Mr. Davis. Please relinquish the mic.
Actually attacked
Thank you.
the cop watcher.
Ms.
Robert
Casper?
West, who's over there.
Ms. Casper, thank you.
Thank you again. It was nice talking with you, about a month ago. And I really want to share my gratitude for working on these recommendations. It's very complicated. I know you've had many discussions. And I'm coming from the mental health communities. I think there's more than one, so I'll just say communities. And my own experience has been with the police here in Japan and also, well, in Portland because of mental health issues. And I have just been observing tonight. I didn't hear any clear talk about working with people in mental health crisis except for Dan Handelman, who just mentioned it. So I'd like to encourage, coming from the communities I'm coming from, as you're having these discussions, if there's any ideas, anything coming up that you've come through the committees that has to do with mental health, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now I'm going to call for a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll start with more recommendations. Thank you. their seats.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, and they seem really nice.
You need references?
I have some, but I might need more.
So first, Amy has a correction for the vote on the last recommendation.
Yes, so Ime is participating remotely and the video got a bit behind, so she actually had missed some of the conversation. Earlier, she had sort of pre-voted with a yes, but actually has changed her vote to abstention. So it still fails, but now 4 to 3 to 4.
Thank you, Amy. Mr. Schuman thought he'd signed up to talk, but he didn't check the right box, so you know how we are as bureaucrats. But now you've got your 2 minutes now.
My name's Mike Schuman. I work with Portland Cop Watch. And I just want to say a couple of things. The reason that you're all here is because the police, the rank and file police have been doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And your job is to come and help this reform through. And there are a lot of police officers, I understand, that are the union rank and file that don't want this committee to succeed. They don't want anything to change. And the police officers here, I thought, have been amazingly helpful in the debate, especially Lieutenant Hager, who's a good debater and plus knows what does well. But I also recently discovered that one of the officers assigned here has filed a complaint against one of the COAB members. And the result of that was that an investigator came out and investigated one of you. And I think that when that kind of thing happens, that something should stop it, because it looks to me from the outside that it could possibly be done deliberately in order to get people off of the committee, or to cause problems, or just to get people so that they're not very happy. Because when an investigator shows up at your front door, it's a scary thing, especially if that investigator was sent by a police officer, and even if it's not the police investigating. And I think that all of you on this committee should make sure that that does not happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the information to the public, that complaint has been, for all practical purposes, resolved. Thank you. We're moving on to recommendation 303-24156-5 that has to do with foot pursuits. Should clarify which kinds of foot pursuits should be initiated or terminated. And the recommendation reads, I have chocolate in my mouth, excuse me. Revised Directive 630.15, foot pursuits with regard to solo foot pursuits. Directive 630.15 should be revised to clarify when solo foot pursuits should be initiated or terminated and include at least the following. Officers shall not engage in or continue a foot pursuit while acting alone, unless the delay in the apprehension of the subject would present an immediate threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or civilians. Even if that level of threat exists, the officer acting alone has the discretion to not engage or continue a foot pursuit. If exigent circumstances exist, the lone officer shall keep the suspect in sight from a safe distance and help coordinate containment. Tom.
The COAB, I think at the last meeting, passed a recommendation to improve the current foot pursuit policy in several respects. There was concern expressed, however, at the time about a prohibition against solo foot pursuits. So that was voted down and pulled from the recommendation as it ultimately passed. It went back to the subcommittee, and we did some research, including looking at the International Chiefs of Police, or International Association of Chiefs of Police, and a model policy they have on foot pursuits. And the concern that had been expressed by the COAB and maybe even community people was that there may be some situations where solo foot pursuits are justified. And the history is everyone in law enforcement recognizes how dangerous foot pursuits are, particularly ones that are conducted by officers acting alone. Particularly because at the end of the foot pursuit, if you're acting alone, too often somebody gets seriously injured or shot, and it may be the officer, it may be the individual. Notwithstanding that, again, the concern had been expressed that if the person who's fleeing presents a level of threat of either death or serious physical injury, that the person is actually acting in a way to raise that specter of injury, serious injury or death, then an officer may, but doesn't necessarily have to pursue that person. And so we've added that language to allow for the exception. We also added language to protect officers from being disciplined if they, using their discretion, decided nonetheless not to pursue. They might just still feel it's too dangerous. And lastly, we aren't suggesting that surveillance shouldn't be conducted if possible. And if it's important, then the officer can surveil, try to coordinate the use of other tools, perimeters, other officers showing up, some kind of containment, but not pursue in the sense that that officer will individually try to capture the person. So it's a recommendation that builds in officer safety considerations, considerations of safety for the person who's running, and it allows for an exception when you really are faced with death or serious physical injury. So what that means is, under the policy, you can't pursue the typical shoplifter if you're alone. Can't do it because it's too dangerous. And what we looked at was previous recommendations from Park, the consultant that advised the Police Bureau repeatedly, starting in 2003 through 2009. We also looked at recommendations to the Las Vegas Police Department along the same line. It's just dangerous, and there should be some limits so that there's a protection, and that's what the purpose of this recommendation coming back before the COAB is.
Okay. I only have, okay, Bud?
Quick question, Tom. On the last sentence of that recommendation, we say, if exigent circumstances exist, the loan officer shall keep the suspect in sight, et cetera. So reading that means to me, if we have unusual circumstances, then it's okay to just surveil. Is that what we were meaning to say, or were we meaning to use the word unless? To say, unless unusual circumstances exist, surveillance is what we want to do?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I have one person signed up, and that's Mr. Davis. And Mr. Davis, this is about foot pursuits. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that foot pursuits in a lot of cases should not even be done, because a lot of crimes are actually not worth the possibility of people getting hurt, whether it's the person that's running or the officer. And a lot of the times it just escalates the situation. There's lots of people that have got Measure 11 charges from incidents not only with police and foot pursuits on a minor crime like shoplifting, where it turns into a Measure 11 because the person struggles with the officer or a security guard, because basically once you steal something and then you use any sort of physical force, it turns it into a Measure 11. So this could actually, increase a lot of things that don't even need to be dealt with, and clog up the court systems. This whole Measure 11 thing, it actually really needs to be taken off the books because it's so indiscriminate. And there's cases, I know of cases where a person had their skateboard stolen by two guys. The guy's skateboard was stolen, and what happened was these guys were on the waterfront. They pushed him down. Next thing you know, they're doing a Measure 11 sentence for stealing a $50 skateboard. So that's like 2 people incarcerated for multiple years over a $50 skateboard, and someone that wasn't even injured, they just got pushed
Time's
to the
up,
ground.
Mr. Davis.
So,
Thank you. COAB members, discussion? Philip?
Thank you. I just quickly want to share from my personal experience being involved with the foot pursuit, and I'll try to be brief as I can. I was living in LA during that time. I was at a bar with some friends planning to go home. My car was parked, and I saw a black man who was actually in my car. I swore I had locked my car at that time, but I had no idea what was going on. I saw this person inside my car, so I ran in and grabbed this person. I said, what the fuck are you doing in my car? And he realized that I was the owner of the car at that time. So he pushed me back against the car. I fell back against the car, and he ran off. I actually ended up pursuing him, and my friend was with me trying to stop me from engaging in this pursuit. My friend was, on the phone talking to the police about this man who tried to steal my car. And I really lost it. I lost him later as I was running after him. At that time, 4 police cars showed up. They told me to calm down from the situation. I thought that they would find the guy, but actually what happened was an individual who was speaking on the phone, a hearing friend of mine, there was a car parked on the street, and they noticed that I actually matched a description, so the police officer apprehended me at that time.
No, that he operated that person.
That he apprehended that person during that time, and they correctly identified the right person at that time. But the point was, my experience with this is that, the officers, they did a job, but I told them not to do that again. They told me I was not to do that. They said that actually the individual who was in my car had a knife at that time, and I didn't realize that it was so dangerous to just pursue someone because I was trying to find out who that person was and get information about them. But I felt, I didn't really understand the severity of that situation, and later the officer explained that to me. So they can be very dangerous. I just wanted to share that experience that I had.
Other comments? Questions? Philip?
I move that we approve this recommendation.
Who's the second? Bud, okay. Read the directive once more. It should be the recommendation once more. Revise the directive 630.15 foot pursuits with regard to solo foot pursuits. It should be revised to clarify when solo foot pursuits should be initiated or terminated and include at least the following. Officers shall not engage in or continue a foot pursuit while acting alone unless the delay in the apprehension of the subject would present an immediate threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or civilians. Even if that level of threat exists, the officer acting alone has the discretion to not engage or continue a foot pursuit. If exigent circumstances exist, the loan officer shall keep the suspect in sight from a safe distance and help coordinate containment. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
It's already moved.
So, who?
Philip
Abel?
moved,
I
Bud
think-
seconded.
I made the motion. Wait, what?
Okay.
I already made the motion.
Okay.
And
Who-
then Bud
Did I
seconded.
get and I got a second? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to call the roll.
Right.
Bud? Mr.
Aye.
Pulis? Ms. Gordley?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Curley?
Yes.
Ms. Medina? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Myron?
Yes.
Ms. Moreland Capua?
Yes.
Ms. Revere?
Aye.
Ms. Silver?
Yes.
Mr. Steenson?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Next recommendation has to do with emergency medical aid. This is recommendation 032416-1. Emergency medical aid should include an explanation of what kinds of first aid CPR training is required and offered. So the recommendation is fairly simple. Clarify training required and courses offered. Is it CPR and first aid or both? Are all PPB officers required to take both CPR and first aid? I don't have anybody signed up to comment on this. So any discussion on the part of the COAB? Okay.
Well, the way I look at it is that all officers should be trained in first aid and CPR, not just for when they're dealing with a suspect, but when they're dealing with innocent people, like at a traffic accident. It makes the officer look good if they're actually doing something besides standing outside waiting for an ambulance, and it could actually save someone's life. CPR and first aid, sometimes it's minutes between life and death. And first aid can save someone's life that way. Might be a tourniquet, might be CPR, but there's people out there that need first aid and CPR, and police are some of the first responders, some of the first people that get there. It'd be nice to have them trained. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. COAB discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the question. We are trained in CPR and first aid, and this last in-service, we started to go through additional tactical trauma care, and it's in a staged process. But we are trained in putting on tourniquets. We've actually saved quite a few lives this year and last year with tourniquet application. So we are doing that. So just to make sure you guys all know that that is actually happening and is occurring. Yes.
Dr. Moreland Capua, did you have anything you wanted to say, or Dr. Myron, did you have anything you wanted to say about this particular recommendation?
I think that actually clarifies, I don't know.
Yeah, no, because the policy wasn't clear. We didn't know which it was. I mean, CPR is a form of first aid, and it wasn't clear that all officers were trained in both. But if you were there, you would have clarified that, and we would not even have this recommendation. So, thank you.
So if it was not, well, I have a question as the chair. If it was not clear when you read it, is there something that you'd like to see happen so that it is clear to the next reader?
Yeah, in the policy. So I think we discussed it. Literally, it's a pretty basic recommendation to please clarify that as you have here today. So that is the recommendation as it stands.
As it stands,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
And we gave some some more meat if you want to read about the distinction between CPR and first aid, not to insult people, but just to make sure that we're clear.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So can I get a motion? Philip?
Thank you. I don't see any harm in just clarifying the details, and with that said, I move to vote on the recommendation.
Second. That.
So Philip moved and Alicia seconded. All right. I'm going to call the roll. Bud?
Aye.
Abel?
Aye.
Jimmy?
Aye.
Ime?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Alicia?
Yeah.
V?
Yes.
Rochelle? Tom?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. The next one. 032416-2. Revised Directive 870.2, Custody and Transportation of Subjects. Under handcuffing, change 2.1, when possible, to in the event that handcuffs are cutting off circulation. Remove might in every space, define reasonable suspicion, clarify the distinction and definitions of when people are in custody versus non-custody, spell out and define detoxification holds, define DPSST. So the recommendation reads pretty much as I just read it. Change when possible to in the event that handcuffs are cutting off circulation. Remove might in every space, define reasonable suspicion, clarify the distinction and definition of when people are in custody versus non-custody, spell out and define detoxification holds, and define DPSST. Do you want to speak to this, either of the co-chairs?
Yeah. We'll have actually Dr. Silver speak to it.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that when we removed the word might, that occurs 4 or 5 times, we were replacing it with the word is.
Okay, I skipped, Mr. Davis had signed up to comment on this one. This is the this is recommendation 032416-2. It's related to handcuffing. Oh, I don't know
It's
that I.
870.20.
Yes.
It's custody of
870.20.
custody and
I basically would like to see handcuffs used a lot less than they are actually used, because they're used all the time for almost every arrest. You guys don't basically arrest people without handcuffs in most cases. And handcuffs cause a lot of injuries. I had a handcuffed injury when I was 19 years old, and I had the police squeeze on my handcuffs for hours at a time and torture me in front of the medical staff at the Orange County jail in Santa Ana, California. So I know what a handcuffed injury can do, and I've been arrested a couple times in the last few months just for filming, and every time I get arrested, I have to deal with my handcuff injury flaring up for a month or two and me having to deal with that injury. I actually have a improper use of force complaint that got bumped up to the internal affairs, and that's for my November 25th arrest while filming Barry Joe Stull get arrested at City Hall. And, you know, my wrists basically about now, they feel about as bad as they did before November 25th, before I had to have my handcuffed injury flare up again. And I wasn't resisting, and they used pain compliance techniques against me, which is the reason I filed a complaint against Officer Parik Singh and Axthorpe, I think. Isn't that one of your guys' names? I forget his, I'm pretty sure that's his name, Axel Thorpe or something, but, you know. So these are real issues, and people are repeatedly put into handcuffs that are put on too tight. They ask the cops to loosen them, and half the time they actually get their handcuffs put on tighter.
Time's up, Mr. Davis. Thank you.
Thanks once again, Dan Handelman from Portland Cop Watch. I got to tell you, this is not really substantive about the recommendations, except that I can't understand some of the recommendations because they're just a couple of words. The previous recommendations that have been considered tonight and in other nights were very specific. They listed the language that was being replaced and what's going to be, what the new language is going to be. And I cannot find a section 2.1 in the directive that's been put out for the public to review. So I'm not objecting to the recommendation, but I just want to say procedurally, I can't understand it. I also don't see any pros and cons on here, and I know that was part of what led to the complaint that was talked about earlier that had to do with the pros and cons not being listed. I don't see them on here. And again, I don't think that's a big deal because I think this is a very simple proposal, but it's confusing to me as a member of the public. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Okay. Bud?
So quick question. In reading this, can you clarify the intent? Because I'm struggling to understand whether this would increase or decrease the use of handcuffing.
Rochelle?
It would not increase or decrease the use of handcuffing, but the verbiage in the current policy says that the handcuffs would be loosened when possible, and we're making it so that they're loosened when it's cutting off circulation, which is loosened more often. So it's about loosening.
Thank you.
If I remember correctly, a lot of this recommendation is about clarifying the circumstances surrounding certain particular actions. One was when the word might is used, it lacks some clarity in what should happen. And if I remember, that's why it was asked to remove might and insert words like is. Sharon?
Yeah, just along those lines, just for an example, that members have authority to handcuff persons under the following circumstances, and then it goes through a thing and it says a reasonable suspicion that the person might present an immediate threat of serious physical injury, changing that to does present or an immediate threat. So that would be one example, and there are a number of those throughout the directive.
And the other piece is, when we had a discussion about this, we knew that the Use of Force Committee had already given some recommendations and reviewed, and we went through and we simply wanted to, many of our recommendations were around, can you please clarify when possible, spell things out. It didn't require deep research or in depth of like pros and cons. It's like, please clarify where we can and define these things for us. That was the primary of our discussion on that particular policy that night.
More questions or discussion by the COAB? Can I get a motion on this recommendation, please?
I do so move to vote on this recommendation.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to vote on the recommendation, which clarifies language. It reads, 2.1, change when possible. 2, in the event that handcuffs are cutting off circulation. That's under handcuffing 2.1. Remove might in every space, define reasonable suspicion, clarify the distinction and definitions of when people are in custody versus non-custody, spell out and define detoxification holds, and define DPSST. I will call the roll. Mr. Pulis.
Aye.
Ms. Gordley.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Curley.
Aye.
Ms. Medina.
Aye.
Ms. Myron. Dr.
Aye.
Myron.
Yes.
Yes. Revere.
Aye.
Silver.
Aye.
Steenson.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you for increasing the size of the font. Okay. The next recommendation is 32032416-3. Directive 630.45, emergency custody transport, should be revised. Here is the recommendation. And it's pretty long. All right, get ready. Directive 630.45, emergency medical custody transport should be revised as follows. The directive should contain only policy statements. Since such policy statements apply to all members of the Portland Police Bureau, extraneous and confusion section titles such as policy, procedure, and member responsibility should be eliminated. 2, the directive should be clarified and revised so that persons who are seriously injured, seriously ill, unconscious, having difficulty breathing, or having other serious medical problems are not transported by anyone other than emergency medical services, which is typically American Medical Response, AMR personnel. 3, current paragraph 1.1 of the current section entitled Policy in the directive should be revised to eliminate the term excited delirium and to read, appears to be agitated, overstimulated, paranoid, disoriented, or extremely restless, or to be having involuntary twitching of small muscle or hallucinations. 4, current paragraph 1.3 of the current section titled Policy in the directive should be revised to read, quote, displays respiratory difficulty per witness statement or self-proclamation, including but not limited to shortness of breath or extreme wheezing. 5, current paragraph 1.1.3 of the current section entitled Procedure in the directive should be revised to read, quote, EMS personnel at a scene will determine whether an in-custody person is seriously injured, seriously ill, unconscious, having difficulty breathing, or for any other reason requires medical treatment or further medical evaluation, and if so, only EMS, unless unable to transport, will transport the person to a hospital. 6, current paragraph 1.1.4 of the current section titled Procedure in the directive should be revised to read, quote, the PPB values human life and needs to ensure the health and safety of persons is not jeopardized by members transporting persons who have serious medical problems. Members must notify EMS personnel of the custody status of the person, in parentheses, for example, arrested with criminal charges, police hold, etc., close parentheses, as well as full disclosure of the following. A, the type and amount of any force used against the person, including, but not limited to, whether the person was struck by an officer or another person, and if so, with what? Example, fist, elbow, knee, foot, baton, flashlight, or beanbag, close parenthesis. How many times was the person struck, and what reaction person appeared to have to being struck? Double I. Whether the person was pushed, tackled, or taken down, or for any reason struck a hard surface, for example, iron railing, brick wall, pavement, or sidewalk, and what reaction the person appeared to have to that event. 3, any use of the taser on the person. How many times was the person tasered, and what reaction the person appeared to have to each use of the taser. And 4, any use of pepper spray on the person, and what reaction the person appeared to have to being pepper sprayed. B, either prior to, per witnesses' statements or self-proclamation, or during police contact, did the person appear to have had or to be 1, agitated, overstimulated, paranoid, disoriented, extremely restless, involuntary twitching of small muscles or hallucinations. 2, any seizure. 3, any respiratory difficulty, including but not limited to shortness of breath or extreme wheezing. 4, obvious signs of head trauma or loss of consciousness. 5, signs of extreme intoxication or under the influence of drugs in conjunction with any of the above symptoms and has been involved in a prolonged physical altercation. 6, admits to being under the influence of cocaine or amphetamine substances and has been involved in a prolonged physical altercation. C, any complaints by the person regarding his medical condition, including but not limited to 1, pain, 2, difficulty breathing, and 3, a need for the person's prescribed medication. Number 7, current paragraph 1.3.2 of the current section titled Procedure in the directive should be revised to read, if the, quote, if the medical staff at the Multnomah County Detention Center, another jail, or a holding facility refuses to admit a person transported by a member of the PPB to the location, EMS will be called. Persons who are seriously injured, seriously ill, unconscious, having difficult breathing, or having other serious medical problems will not be transported to the hospital by anyone other than EMS, which is typically American Medical Response personnel. Ooh.
Nice.
The person I have signed up for this one, again, is Mr. Davis. And Mr. Davis, you have 2 minutes. I don't have you signed up, Mr. Handelman, but we know.
I understand.
Yes, but we should just print them out with your name on them.
Well, the other thing is, I don't have the proper paperwork to comment on this again because the Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch, the copy of the directive that we have has completely different numbering from the numbering that is in this recommendation, and I think I know the reason why. I think the Bureau posted a proposed revision, and these comments were made on the proposed revision. And there used to be a late night host who would hold up his emails like this and pull it back down again before you could read it. And I think what happens is they post up these proposed directives, and they pull it off the website, you can't find it anymore. So it's very hard for people in the community to follow what you're talking about because the paperwork doesn't match your recommendations.
Okay.
And if this goes to a broader question about the Directives Project, I'm sure Captain Marshman can explain more of this to you, but the Directives Project was suspended this month. There were no directives to review for the first time in a year. And I'm very thankful. Now I was able to do the other analysis, but it sort of makes me wonder when we're going to get done with this project, if ever. So again, this obviously is, a lot of this comes from what happened to James Chassie, and we're very happy at CopWatch that these proposals are being recommended. I hope that they're accepted. But there has to be some way for the recommendations that the police made to stay online with a date on it so you know when it was proposed so we can match these things up together. And until the new version is finished, I think the old recommendations stay up somewhere. Thanks.
I have a quick question.
Yes, V.
So, Dan, would that look something like archived?
Yeah, well, like archive.org, but I think it should be on the Bureau's website. I think it should say, here are the directives that we considered in the month of June, or whatever month it was. And you can read the proposals, and those proposals should stay online until and after the new one's actually published. And then you can see the original one, you can see the proposal they put in, and then you can see what they decide. And that way you'll also be able to see how many of your recommendations got put in, right? Whether it was actually changed from the proposed recommendation to the final one.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Handelman. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I basically wanted to talk about how a lot of people are actually denied medical transport, and I was actually denied medical transport myself, and not all these ambulance people are very good at doing their job or protecting the community. Like, half of them actually work in concert with the police, and if the police want the ambulance to go away and not see the person, then that can be very easily arranged, as I've seen myself personally when I called for an ambulance on the 25th of November. But, and also Barry Joe Stahl, he called for an ambulance, and he got, I think he got about almost 100 days in jail for calling for an ambulance at City Hall on November 25th. And he got beaten up by Todd Engstrom, who started throwing haymakers at him in City Hall. So, I don't even know if
What's a haymaker?
it's a big, like, round punch, you know, like whoosh. But yeah, Todd Engstrom was throwing haymakers. You can go check out the video. Portland's abysmal treatment of journalists and the mentally ill, or the arrest of Barry Joe Stahl, part 1 and 2. And the Portland City has not released the video footage of my arrest, which shows me being tackled by a G4S security goon, and you know, there's a big lack of transparency.
Okay.
I have a question.
Hold on 1 second here. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I appreciate your experience and what you've been sharing. What I'm looking for is solutions. If you have maybe any suggestions, and how do you feel about this recommendation? Are you supporting it or are you against it? I mean, I understand your experience, but I'm wondering if you have a different perspective you could share about possible solutions, if you're for or against this recommendation, what you would like to see for it. Are you in support of this, or?
I definitely think that medical people should be more available, and that the injuries shouldn't even necessarily have to be that serious to require medical attention.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
I have a hand here from Abel and a hand from Sharon.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Davis, if you don't mind standing there for another minute. I'd like to know how you use the video that you shoot in the COAB meetings.
how do I use it?
Yes. Is it posted someplace, or?
I actually haven't really posted any of the COAB videos per se, but I do have a Multnomah County Cop Watch YouTube channel, and I will be posting a bunch of stuff in the future, and also doing a public access TV show.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, Sharon, then V, then we're going to stop because we only got about 15 minutes left this evening. Sharon?
Thank you. Two things. First of all, in response to, I think, what Mr. Davis said, I believe that this revision does go to what he was asking for, which is an improvement in access to medical care. And I, in the interest of time, would request, make a motion that we adopt, but I'm not sure how to do this. There are two, as a friendly amendment in paragraph 2, at the end it says not transported by anyone other than, there's a typo, other than emergency medical services, EMS, and end it there. I'm not sure why it's added, which is typically AMR personnel. That's just a certain company of ambulance. So I would take that out. And that also appears in the final paragraph, number 7, so removed there. And then in paragraph 6C little II, where it talks about pain, difficulty breathing, and instead of and, it should be or a need for the person's prescribed medication. With those friendly amendments, I would move to
Well, since
adopt.
you're co-chair of the committee, do you accept your friendly amendments?
I accept my amendments.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, is this accountability? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought it was mental health.
Oh, sorry.
B?
Thank you. I wanted to go back to Mr. Davis's comments. I want to just be clear that he believes that there should be more scrutiny with the what do they call it? EMS personnel, the AMR, that's what I know it as, because of some concern when people are being transported. Did I hear you correctly, or no?
You heard.
I basically have seen the police and the ambulance drivers coordinate to where the person should have gotten medical attention.
Certainly, there's been cases of that.
They basically are friends or know they have.
So your comments.
With these guys all the time, so I'm sure they have certain relationships.
So would you say that I understood you correctly? Just more scrutiny?
Some of these ambulance drivers are not very.
So more scrutiny.
Okay.
Some of the cops that aren't that good, and when someone needs medical attention.
Well, it sounds like you're right, B.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So we've got you.
Thank you, Keith.
We've
Okay,
got
thank you, Keith.
So you haven't answered your question, but there's another question pending from, or another issue pending from Sharon, which is the deletion in items 2 and 7 of the phrase, which is typically American Medical Response, AMR, and the revision, and I can't remember where you said that was?
Paragraph.
Hmm?
Oh, it's up there, but paragraph 6C, little 2, it's on toward the bottom of page 2.
Oh, difficulty breathing or.
A need for the person's prescribed medication, so it can be any one of those, it doesn't have to be all of them.
Well, you don't need and or. You don't need either one of them there. They're just a list, right? Okay. So the chair of the Accountability Committee is Philip. And so the question is whether you will accept those friendly amendments.
Yes, I accept those amendments. I think they'd help clarify, and I have no objections to those. So, but yeah, I'm up for a discussion. If other people support that as a friendly amendment, I'll leave that up to the group.
About to wrap this up.
So I'm moved to move forward with the vote on this recommendation with those friendly amendments.
Second.
Have a second?
Oh,
Second.
I'm sorry. It was my understanding that we needed to approve the friendly amendment and vote on the friendly amendment before we move the.
You accepted them.
Yeah.
You accepted them.
That's what we did.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
done.
Oh,
You-
I accepted. Well, I'd like some input for other
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
so but.
The discussion is closed from the audience right now. We're having a discussion with the COAB, and we're going to take a vote.
Right, but the thing is, the city of Portland
Okay.
also goes into other counties too.
Well, this recommendation here is what we're voting on. This is what we're voting on, and we can't, okay. So, we have amended this so that those two phrases are omitted, and one word has been omitted. I need a motion.
I made a motion.
It's been moved and seconded.
Okay.
I second.
It's getting late.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's real late.
Take a vote.
I'm going to call the roll. Mr. Pulis.
Bud is an aye.
Okay. Ms. Gordley.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Curley.
Aye.
Ms. Medina.
Aye.
Ms. Myron.
Aye.
Ms. Moreland Capua,
Yes.
Ms. Revere,
Aye.
Ms. Silver, Mr. Steenson,
Aye.
Mr. Wolf.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. There is one last recommendation. We have 6 minutes left.
Let's take it over to the next.
I would like to know your preference at this point. Would you like to move that? Or would you like to try to get this done in 6 minutes? Or would you like to extend the meeting?
Let's move it. We're almost out of time. I say we should, this is a really important recommendation. I really want to thoroughly understand the recommendation in its entirety, so I move that we postpone it till the next meeting.
I second.
Yep, agreed.
Moved and seconded that we postpone it till the next meeting.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opposed? Who was that?
I'm not opposed either.
Okay. That's 2 opposed. And abstentions? Does it carry? Because I didn't count.
Yeah,
Hmm?
There was only 2, and so if
Yeah.
there's 10 people, it's 8, so it carries.
It carried.
Seven.
Okay.
Yeah, it carries.
It will be moved to the next agenda.
I can discuss that recommendation if we want to, but if everybody needs to take off, then I recommend we just postpone it. Maybe I wasn't clear about that. But.
That was recommended. It was seconded. It was voted on, and it's moved. Ellen?
Chair Sadat and the members of the committee, I just had
wait, what?
Chair Sadat gave me the floor. I just had a point of order for you all, which is that Mr. Felis actually left before the vote was called, and the public meetings law doesn't allow absentee voting. So I just wanted your record to be reflected that that he was actually not present for the vote and did not vote.
Can he vote now?
Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't say he, Chair Felis. Bud is not, Bud is back. There you are. Okay, great, yes. Problem solved.
We love you, Ellen.
So he didn't leave permanently, so that, okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Motion for
Yeah.
discussion.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Or do you want me to call the roll?
No.
Motion to adjourn has been passed. We are now adjourned.